Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we preview the Detroit Lions Week 11 matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The 8-1 Lions are returning to Ford Field after an incredible comeback victory and riding a 7-game winning streak. The Lions find themselves favored by 13.5 points in this upcoming contest. So with all the numbers going the Lions' way, what is there to look out for? Well, we'll discuss that and some things that might surprise you about Jacksonville. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Jameer Gibbs, and you listen to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today for the preview is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions, and current Scouting and Training Director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, good to have you here.
Great to be here, Matt.
Joining us both to make us smarter and wiser is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast that drops on Mondays. James, thanks for being here and bringing the wisdom to the room.
I don't know about that, but I hope the Lions can keep bringing some more wins. They got this nice little pocket where these games right here, Jags, Colts, Bears, they should be big favorites in all three of those games. So let's go.
All right. Well, as we get ready to go, let's finish up with some final thoughts from the last game. You know, we talked about the rush defense. James, you brought that stat up about Joe Mixon. Since 2013, no running backs rushed for so few yards on 25-plus carries. I just want to give some love out to the run defense returning, because for a few games, people are really getting concerned about what's going on with the rush defense. It wasn't just a lack of pass rush. Suddenly, teams were running the ball against us, and we stopped a really good team that could run the ball from running the ball. So I think that's a really important thing to remember, and it really helped the entire part of our defense.
No matter what somebody's trying to establish on us, we make sure we change the narrative, and I think that's the biggest thing. And those are our narratives. And so when teams try to come out and try to do certain things against us, and we can put a stop to them, it takes something out of that card, takes something off that playbook. Especially you stop the run, now you become one-dimensional. And so those are the biggest things about each week as we go in. And we've been hearing about it all throughout the year. Oh, this team's a great rush defense stopper. This team's a great rushing team. And what do? We stop them. So that's, it's good stuff.
Yeah, and when we make the other teams one-dimensional, well, that's playing into what we're doing really well this year, which last year it didn't play into what we did well, but it made it easier so we could be more one-dimensional in game plan. Our secondary is balling. I mean, think about a year ago where we were at this time and how many guys have been injured. Kindle Vildor, I don't know if he might have been on the team at this point. He might not have been on the team till December last year. And he is our number 4th or 5th guy on the depth chart right now. Branch at safety, we kind of talked about this last week or in the last episode with the reemergence of Kirby as well. I mean, even if we're not getting all the sacks, we're getting some pressure, we're stopping the run, and our secondary is so much stronger, James, that it's got to give you a lot of confidence as the season's going on.
Yeah, and with Emmanuel Mosley coming back, Vildor could be the 6th corner almost pretty soon here. So yeah, that secondary has really helped them. Getting Josh Paschal back on the defensive line, I think, really helped that run defense. And then they loaded up the defensive line by putting Levi out at defensive end instead of defensive tackle a lot of the time, and he's a huge guy when you put him at defensive end. So
that he is, James. I think you also want to talk about the Lions on these road wins they have, and kind of looked at the past, compared or contrasted what it used to look like.
Yeah, you guys remember years and years and years ago, close to 20 years ago maybe, when the Lions lost 19 straight on the road.
Yeah.
19 straight. The 19th one was in New York, I think, against the Jets. And I remember working at the paper then, and I used the headline "Road Apple" for that one because it was in New York and it was on the road. So I felt it just went perfect.
I
Now they set the franchise record by winning 5 straight on the road. I mean, man, how times have changed. It's a great time to be a Lions fan.
if my memory is serving me correctly, the Lions broke that 19-game road loss streak by a win, I think, in Chicago against the Bears, of course, but I think it was against the Bears. And if I'm not mistaken, Jim Schwartz was the coach, and he said it wasn't pretty, but it sure was beautiful. And so let's talk about some streaks. I mean, the Lions only rushed for 105 yards in the game this past week. I said only. Remember when we went 70 games in a row without a 100-yard rusher? Now, we didn't have a 100-yard rusher in the game. We had 100 yards rushing total. But there was a stretch, 2013 to 2018. Reggie Bush was the ball carrier in 2013, and it wasn't until 2018 rookie Kerryon Johnson had like 101 or 103 yards or something like that. We went 70 games. And if I'm going to do some more rushing stuff here, Coach, the Lions have not allowed a 100-yard rusher against them. I think I saw in like nearly 700 days. And so, I mean, those are some crazy numbers from just, what James brought up as well, from not so long ago on one far end of the spectrum to now where, what we're seeing a big transformation here. It seems like every other week a new record's being broken. And Coach, it's nice that Campbell's embraced the past from the moment he got here, so you remember where you came from, which helps keep you grounded where you are, right?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, that's the thing is, we as fans also are getting spoiled. Oh my God, Goff threw five interceptions. He didn't have 83% completion. He didn't throw 18 passes in a row. And now which is great, as we know as fans for years, to be able to say that and look and go, are you seriously 700 days since somebody rushed, one individual rush for 100 yards against the Lions? It's hard to believe. And the funny thing is, last Sunday he was getting really close to it. He popped off a couple big ones, but man, the second half we dial in, we make some game changing, at halftime, and things get shut down. So yeah, to be where we were 5 years ago to where we are today as fans is totally awesome. And like you said, guys, we could sit here and go, oh, this is the first time in franchise history. Oh, this is the first time. And oh my God, this is, and it's just amazing. And it's fun to read. And of course I got it for a little, snapbacks with my Eagle friend fans and my Raven fans and stuff like that. So, but it's a great time to be a Lions, as James said earlier.
At Kroger Pharmacy, CARE is making it easy to get vaccinated. CARE is helping you stay protected from flu, COVID, and RSV. Seasonal vaccines are available 7 days a week with evening hours. CARE is giving you a shot at staying healthy this season. Walk in whenever is best and get multiple vaccines in one visit at your local Kroger pharmacy. So come and get the protection you need while protecting those around you. Kroger Health, a world of care, is in store. Visit Kroger.com/vaccines for more. Restrictions and exclusions apply. See site for details.
All right. Well, as we transition into this new week, this new game, 1 week at a time, there are some transactions to update you on. Linebacker Abraham Beauplan was waived, and he has since been signed to the practice squad. Isaiah Thomas has also been signed to the practice squad. He was waived earlier in the week. Let's see here. Shane Zylstra had been signed earlier to the active roster from the practice squad. He is apparently still there. The Lions brought back Maurice Alexander to the practice squad, and so that's where we're at on roster movements, but we do have some injury updates. Practice schedule came out today. Again, things can change throughout the week, but Za'Darius Smith is practicing, full practice. Broderick Martin, Fatu Melifanu, and Emmanuel Mosley, all full participants in practice. That is some incredible depth right there.
Mm-hmm.
The guys banged up practicing. Malcolm Rodriguez was limited with his ankle. Taylor Decker limited again with his shoulder, and they were both limited and didn't play last week. And then Sam Laporta did not practice. James, when you're looking at the transactions and or at the practice report, what crosses your mind?
That it's a heck of a lot shorter than everybody else's recently. Uh,
Good point.
I mean, if you look at the Jags, it's a laundry list of injuries. The Lions trainers and all that are working some miracles, I think. And that was one of the things I think that Campbell changed when he came in here, is he completely cleaned house in the trainers and the physical therapists and all that the team has, and then brought in a whole new regime kind of there. I mean, the Jags have, I think I counted 6 starters that were either limited or did not practice today.
Yeah, that's a great point. And interesting and good to bring up is no NFL team is healthy right now. And you know, I know we've seen most of our injuries right on that front part of the defensive line, but every team is banged up throughout. I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be without Trevor Lawrence this week, their starting quarterback. So, Coach, before we hear from Coach Campbell, any thoughts on the injuries, the transactions, the guys practicing right now?
Oh, I think it's great. And again, they'll baby step and bring these guys back, you know, because we're still winning football games, and we don't have to force a guy back earlier than he is. And I just think Campbell and them let the experts on that end take care of it. And I'm going to go back again. Giving Smith last week off, guys, is just, it's the exact same concept. The guy, he's probably banged up. He's probably tired. He's been going through, you know, some wars with Cleveland, and just so, you know, hopefully and, you know, food for thought. Remember last year, our offensive line was never healthy together until the last 4 or 5 games. Yet we still continue to win. So that tells how deep we are and how well they've drafted and signed free agents.
All right. Well, let's hear from Coach Campbell talk about Jacksonville coming to town.
Well, I think no different than I think we just faced a team in Houston that felt like their back was against the wall. I think they that's how they approached that game, and you know, and they brought it. And I would expect nothing different out of this team. I mean, I would expect we're going to get their best game of the year. And same with the Colts after that. So, and same with Chicago after that. Same with Green Bay after that. You know, so we're going to get everybody's best shot. And, you know, you have to understand that we have to assume we will get the best version of what they are and what they're capable of. And so with that, we've got to be on our game.
I think the message that resonates with me the most is he talks about the Lions are going to get Jacksonville's best shot, because the Lions are, you know, king of the jungle. They're at the top of the mountain in the NFC. And so whenever you're a team that's not there and you're playing that team, you come out like another team would, and you want to take that team down. And, you know, Campbell said he didn't just put it on Jacksonville. He added every other team they're going to play. He said they're going to get everyone's best shot here on out. And I love that, because it helps keep the team motivated and focused, because, you know, you wonder sometimes, you know, how do you sustain things? Coach, you've been in situations like this where you've had teams get on a roll, and you play a team, maybe you're 7-0 at that point, you're playing a team that's 2-5, and you're expected to win by double digits like the Lions are, but anything can happen in a game. You know, 5 turnovers doesn't usually result in a win. So how do you keep your team focused? And you know, you got to love that message by Campbell. It seems like he and the coaching staff continue to do things the right way.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about trap games, and it's, you know, when you're looking at what the Lions are doing, you know, there's always, you know, we back in Glen Lake, my second year, we were 8-0 going to the week 9, and guess what? We got pounded. And by a team we should have beat. And so I don't see the Lions. I don't never see Campbell them allowing those guys to get that way. We may have seen a little bit in the Houston game at the beginning of the game why things were going bad. But you got to remember one thing with the Jags. There's a lot of job interviews going on right now for those guys. And I'm gonna, you know, and think about that. There's a lot of job interviews, and I'm not just talking coaching staff. I'm talking about guys that want a second contract. I'm talking about guys that want to hang on if a new regime comes in. So everybody's going to put their best foot forward on tape. And with the injuries, again, we talk about that week in, week out. These backup guys are trying to earn that second contract or trying to earn that third contract or trying to stay on. It's a job, and that's the business part of it. And so, yeah, we're the Detroit Lions, and everybody's talking about us. Smith's talking about us. Rex Ryan's talking about us. All the shows are talking about us. That's all they're talking about. They're the Americans team. Oh, they're the best. Oh, the crowds travel. People want to knock them down. Our shirt, we're printing shirts up, with gestures on them. We're talking, podcasts, the talk shows about how great they are, and no better way to salvage a season to knock off supposedly the future Super Bowl champs. So get out of the press clippings, guys, and let's go.
I mean, Dan Campbell did say the Lions have 11 more games yet this season, so that lines up exactly with what you're saying there, Coach. James, the Lions have won 7 in a row, and it's not like they beat a bunch of teams that were 2-6 through that stretch. So now you're going home, and you've got an opponent like this. Campbell's message, I mean, does that resonate with you? Does that encourage you? What are your thoughts?
Oh yeah, they're going to get Jacksonville's best punch. How good of a punch that is, we'll see. But they're going to get the best one. And I think that another thing, like Jerry was talking about, players auditioning, you got coaches too. They got 2 coaches on the hot seat. Doug Peterson, the head coach, offensive coordinator Press Taylor. Jags fans all over are calling for their heads, as well as the GM Trent Baalke. And so they're going to pull out every stop, I think, in this game, because even playing this game close looks good for them. Not even just a win, but even just playing this game close. I was looking at some Jags message boards, and a bunch of the guys on those message boards are like, "We're going to lose this game by 30. I'll be happy if we can stay within 2 touchdowns by the end," and all this, and they're just imagining just getting destroyed by the Lions.
Well, at 2-8, they don't look like a very good team. But I think they got a little bit of the Tennessee Titans in them. And I know the final score of that Titans game is going to be like, oh, wow. But if you look at Jacksonville's last 3 games, they lost to the Packers by a field goal. They lost to Philadelphia by 5 in Philly. And they lost to Minnesota by 5. Those are all teams that are expected to have a good shot at making the playoffs this year. And they were all 1-score losses. Now, the big change is Mac Jones is in at quarterback. He played quarterback last week, and with Jacksonville having the bye this next week, they said Trevor Lawrence is going to be out. Mac Jones is a backup quarterback, but let's not forget he was a Pro Bowl quarterback at one point. I believe it was his rookie year. And I know he's a backup now, but he's a very capable backup quarterback. And, Coach, you talked about auditioning for other jobs. I believe this is the last year of his contract. So he wants to get signed by somebody next year. He wants to try and get a shot like Baker Mayfield got. And so he's motivated. He is highly motivated to do something in this game. And like you both have said, there's some backs against the wall right now. And so, Coach, what are you thinking out of this Jacksonville offense or from the offensive side of the ball that we might see in this game?
Well, I think, you said it too with Mac. I mean, that's the biggest thing. He's out, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, we can go on and guys. In fact, Joe Flacco, he was on the couch last year and he's still starting. But anyways, so that's the thing you're going to see with him. He's going to come out. He's in the starting. He knows he's starting. The game plan. Peterson, Doug is a good coach. I mean, he's just, he's won all the places he's been to before. And it's just, I think they were, so the idea is, now Bigsby's a pretty good running back, again, we got to stop him. Last week was the same thing. We had a hot running back coming in. Their games have been close, so they're going to play close. They're reading it. They're mad. Every time you read like what James was saying that we're going to get blown up by 30, that's just another 20 minutes somebody's watching film. or trying to figure out how they're gonna get better. And then Ryan Thomas. I mean, he's got 607 receiving yards, right? So it's not like they don't not have bodies and people over there. It's just that, things have gone wrong for them in many instances. And of course, that's the coach's fault. So if it's a strong locker room, if it's a strong team, it's a brotherhood, they're going to come out and they're going to give us a scare. If it's divided, like some of the other teams are in the league, then it may be 30. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. And are they going to rally around Mac Jones, or is it always Trevor's team? So, those are the things I think we're going to see.
All right. Well, I look back at their entire schedule, and they lost to Miami opening week by a field goal. They lost to Cleveland by 5. They lost to Houston by 4. They were blown out by the Bills. And don't ask me what happened in this game, but somehow they were blown out by the Chicago Bears at home. So you look at that, and then you're right. You look at the stats on this team. I mean, their leading rushers averaging 5.5 yards a game. That's Tank Bigsby, right? Travis Etienne, not quite the same numbers. He's not played in every game. The rushing offense, James, is surprisingly ranking 25th. The passing offense is 23rd. And so, what are you expecting out of this offense and the Jacksonville team with Mac Jones back there as well?
I mean, on offense, the players that worry me are Evan Engram, Brian Thomas, and Travis Etienne. Those are players that can make big plays all the time. That touchdown catch a couple weeks ago that Evan Engram had was one of the best catches I've seen by a tight end in a long, long time. Etienne's a guy who can bust a long run all the time. He's, and Brian Thomas is a burner. He's kind of in Jamison Williams kind of cast. Bigsby did not practice today. Dearness Johnson was limited on the injury report. So they don't have a whole lot of depth behind ETN. They've got a 5th round pick in Keelan Robinson, who has been on IR all season, but he fully practiced this week. And you could see him thrown into a role against one of the best run defenses in the league on his first game. He also is a good return guy, though, so that could help them on their special teams. Their offensive line kind of across the board is not great. There's not a whole lot other way to put it. And with Zadarius Smith back and possibly Broderick Martin, the defensive line could have a field day if things go well. They've got 2 of their starting linemen are on the injury report with limited practice as well. Their right guard Brandon Scherf and their center Ezra Cleveland, and their top backup lineman Blake Hance, who backups both guard spots, is also limited. So they could be a little shorthanded, and we'll see how they're doing there.
Yeah, I did not realize that Tank Bigsby's listed as questionable right now. With him being banged up, I mean, if you're going to, I know Travis Etienne is a very capable running back, but like you said, that's less depth there. And switching to Mac Jones is a guy who has potential. I look at him a very different way than I look at a guy like Mason Rudolph when a backup comes in. Right? I think Mac Jones may be one of the most talented backups in the league. And like you said, Coach, he could be that Sam Darnold guy, a guy who wants to get a shot at a starting quarterback position next year, and he might fit into that mold. And he's done things before. And so I'm hoping the Lions do get some pressure on him a little bit. And I'm interested to see what Zadarius Smith can do. I think the Lions are going to work him in, but not overwork him. And that's one of the things, we just let him learn a few elements of it. Coach, when you get a new player like this, you already said the brilliance of them giving him the week off, which we all agreed with, because we're playing the long game, not the short game. Even if we would have lost that game in Houston, I still think it was the right decision. How do you get a guy in? How do you work him into this system? Are you thinking it's a 25 to 40% of the snaps of his regular work, what he's regularly going to get, not the total number of snaps, but, maybe a little bit less than half of his normal workload? Or how do they monitor stuff like that when you bring a new guy in?
Well, AG is so up on situational players and guys getting in. So again, he has no flaws, knock on wood. So he could probably play just about anything. And again, I think they may go how the game goes and how he goes. It's kind of, it's kind of tough. I don't think they come in and say, hey, we're only going to give you 30 snap counts, because they may only put him in one or two packages. And, the Lions have been doing a ton of package stuff. I
Yep.
know the big one's going to be in passing situations, because he's going to be in there. And then you got Houston, who played very well last week. And then what that does for us is it moves Levi down inside. And now you got Levi and McNeil, who had pressures last week too. I mean, the numbers and the pressures we're getting from those guys is amazing. And now to put him inside Levi and then put him on the outside, and now you got, you can run some games and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting. Houston had 16 snaps last week. So is he going to get more snaps this week? Because he played well, pass drops, run, stop, stuff like that. And then that, of course, is going to also cut into what we do with Za'Darius. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. And it might be too. Then Levi gets a couple, downs off, and Reader gets some downs off, because Levi can go in for him. So it's a good thing to have. But again, if the game's going well, I got to believe they may limit him. If it's not going well, I bet they're going to turn that dog loose.
All right, well, you brought up James Houston. That's a guy I think all of us and most Lions fans are wanting to see what comes of him this game, right? Because we saw a pretty great performance last week. How much playing time does he get? What type of impact does he have? And the linebacker position as well. I mean, Malcolm Rodriguez, he's questionable again, right? So don't know if we'll see him or not. That's going to mean more Trevor Nowaski and Ben Neiman. We've seen both of those guys having an impact on this team. And, did I not see that Derek Barnes was in the facility? Not expected to play or anything or practice even, but he's back around the facility, and I thought I heard he was trying to do some rehab with Hutch. And so that's cool if he's in the building and able to see some of the guys. Is that accurate?
I didn't see anything. Did you, James?
I haven't seen anything on Barnes. I wouldn't be surprised though.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
When he got hurt, they kind of indicated like he would be, that there was a good possibility he was back towards the end of the regular season.
Okay. So anyway, that's worth keeping an eye on. But the depth at linebacker has gotten thin as well, you guys. It's not just the defensive line. And so that's been nice seeing the growth out of a guy like Trevor Nowaski. And I'm hoping Malcolm Rodriguez can get healthy, because we're going to need him for this 11-game stretch we're hoping to be on. So, yeah, Coach, what do you got?
Well, one of the other things, going back to that too, with that, the pressures are good, but Mac Jones last week was 10 for 14 on the short passes, and he was 6 for 6 on the passes behind the line of scrimmage. I think he took one deep shot. He was 20, he was 20 at 31. So, he's gonna, we got to think that 10-yard and in, especially this week, because that's what I see them saying. You better get the ball out of your hands with Za'Darius Smith coming and the rest of the guys. I mean, that's and they're looking at the film from last week going, man, these dudes they're pressing us. So, and I think Mac is, like you said, he's a great backup, probably has starter skills to where he knows it's time to check down and don't hang on to it too long. So, just a food for thought on that situation.
And a couple things, right? A, the guy's been there before and done that. This isn't like a guy who's been riding the backup bench for most of his career. And two, he got a game under his belt last week. Mm-hmm. So I would expect he's going to be much more comfortable a week later. And you know what? He saw a pretty incredible defense against those Minnesota Vikings. So this isn't going to be a guy like, overwhelmed, I don't expect. So the Lions defense is going to have to show up. I expect that they will. So let's flip over to the offense. James, what are we expecting of the Lions offense against this Jacksonville defense? What are you thinking?
Well, it's looking more and more like Sam Laporta won't play. I think that's kind of what people have been figuring all week. Didn't practice Wednesday at all, which isn't a good sign. But I think it's a good time to give him a week off and get him back to 100% for the stretch run here. We talked earlier about Decker being limited in practice, but it looks like he's got a decent chance to play. The Jaguars have pretty good defensive ends. Their interior defensive line hasn't been great if you trust PFF numbers, but I think if you've noticed, PFF numbers for defensive tackles can often be very deceiving. Um, so there's really nothing special about their DBs, but their two linebackers in Lloyd and Olukun have been very good this season. And one interesting thing is I think you might be in, especially if Sam Laporta doesn't play, I think you're in for a Brock Wright game because the Jags have a tendency on defense to line a nickel corner on the tight end, which is just not, I just don't know why you would do that on a consistent basis, but they have a tendency to do that a lot. And if you can get the ball to that tight end, it's just overpowering a backup corner to get free and get a big gainer.
Makes a lot of sense. And it's going to be interesting the way the Jacksonville defense plays us, because if you think back to the last couple games, it seemed like Houston was trying to take away a lot of the short stuff against us. So we saw Goff taking some shots. Even when he wasn't connecting, he didn't stop taking those shots. And I believe like a week or so earlier, as chatting with my uncle, he's like, I want to see Goff take some shots downfield. I'm like, well, if they're taking everything away downfield, we're not going to force something down there. So Goff was taking everything short. I think in this game, you're going to see an opportunity for the Lions to do a little bit of both. We'll see what Jacksonville throws at them on the defensive side, because on the defense, Jacksonville is number 32 in total defense, 30th in passing yards, and 20th giving up in rushing yards. And so this is going to be a week where I think the Lions offense, and we're going to talk about this, might have a chance to get on track. And that sounds really weird to say that on a 7-game winning streak, but Coach Campbell even talked about it, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But I think we might be able to see them do a few things and get back to playing, I guess, the consistent football that maybe hasn't always been flowing these last few weeks. So let's start on that offensive line, Coach. James brought it up. Taylor Decker's looking like he might play, but it's not a certain thing he's going to play. And last week we saw Sewell warming up at left tackle, but then playing right tackle. Skipper played left tackle. I believe we have Jamarco Jones as an option we could put in at left tackle. And I know, when you find out on Thursday and you had your reps in, your game plan in all week, that's a quick thing to change. But let's also look at the fact that the Lions have been playing every single week with Sewell at right tackle. There's all kinds of stuff that you're building every week. You don't just throw out your game plan from week 3, do you? Like, you'll use plays from week 3 in week 11. So if you take Sewell out of that spot, does that change how effectively you can run on that side of the ball or do things there? You kind of said it, right? You don't switch 2 guys to fill 1 spot or something like that.
Well, a couple things. First of all, the haze in the barn, Coach Campbell said that, that was always my Thursday night thing. The haze in the barn, Roger Wood taught me that. In other words, you can't change the haze in the barn, shut the door, it's time to play. So when Decker goes down, you can't move Sewell on that situation. So, but if you're worried about protecting on the backside and you want to change up what you're going to do throwing the football, can we run 12 personnel if Laporta's out? Are we able to with Zylstra and Brock Wright? Because then you can chip and stuff like that. We use our backs a ton of times to chip and stuff.
Right.
Let's talk about the run game last week. They were shooting gaps on the zone concept, right? So we changed up to the power concept. We had guys going left and guys going right. We're using angles and stuff. So that Sewell can do that on either side. The zone stuff, Sewell can do that on either side. Instead of toss sweep and right, we're going to toss sweep left. And so those are things that you want to do. And again, how the game plan sets up. And do they feel one of those other guys could step in, or because Skipper has a game under his belt and Skipper has a full week of practice at that position, do we still run with it? What was Skipper's grade compared to the first half compared to the second half? So those are things that they're going to take into consideration on that, And I think, going back to what we talked about, okay, James talked about the corners, okay, and I'm going to touch base. Campbell's rated 65th and Darby's rated 71st. Okay. So, all right. I'm throwing this out at you. So where's our mind going? The two linebackers, Lloyd is 10th and the other one's 11th. So yeah, James is spot on. And again, those are PFF scores, which may change a little bit. So, and I want to touch base on this because this all goes into how they're thinking about this offensive line stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
James already brought it up. They run nickel over 56% of the time on defense. Let me say that again. They run nickel over 56%. Okay. They run cover 1, 31, almost 32%. They run cover 2, almost 30%. Okay. So cover 1, cover 2, that's 60%, 100% coverages with a nickel coverage. Okay. So what are we going to do? If
we're going to run.
You're going to see a ton of motion because we're going to identify. And if they're in cover 1, we're going to take shots. Okay. If they're in cover 2, we're going to run the ball. Right. Or we're going to go the underneath. So again, when you start taking those numbers, that's what the Lions are breaking up right now. So that will determine what they're going to do with Sewell and what they're going to do with Skipper and what they're going to do with the right side. I'm going to ask James. James, do you feel we have a right tackle that can be 70% of Sewell?
Ooh, 70, and Sewell is so high up there. I know there's a lot of people that are 70% of Sewell.
Okay, 60.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, aside, that's not Taylor Decker. I don't know. Yeah.
So those are the things that, they're going to play with. And again, it's going to come up with those few of those percentages I just threw at you. That's how they're going to design it. And I think when you're running 32% cover 1, that's less than us, of course. They have a corner that's 65th and 71st. Can those guys man up? Can those guys press coverage you? I didn't look at their numbers and press coverage, but I'm going to tell you probably not. And so my gut feeling is, hey, we're going to do motions. We're going to use motions. We're going to use zones, and we're going to use power concept. And we're going to bring in the big tackle for Skipper and put him and Skipper together if Skipper starts on the left side. And we're just going to maul people. I mean, that's what we're going to do. So,
well, and it's not like you're going to play, okay, we're going to put this guy on the left side because that's where their defensive end's going to be. Because Danielle Hunter played like 1/3 of the game on one side of the line and then 2/3 on the other side to try and get some of those favorable matchups. And obviously, you can't switch your spots right before you snap the ball based on where the defender's lining up as well. So you're right, Coach. I mean, Sewell might be there to stay, and you might line up a tight end, do some chipping or whatnot. But it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully Decker is healthy enough to play, and that's the way we move with. But that'll be a good spot to see what the Lions do there, because I think they want to get the running game going well to help complement the pass game. Because, James, we see how effective the Lions do the play action pass as good as anybody else, if not better than everybody else. And when you've got Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, two of the best 10 running backs in the NFL, I just threw that number in thin air. I don't know, but it seems real. You want to use them.
Yeah, I would say so. And I think part of like we're going back to with just putting Skipper in at left tackle. I think part of that last week was due to that Decker's injury came late in the week. It popped up, I think, on Thursday.
Yeah.
It happened in practice on Thursday. So I don't think they wanted to scrap their game plan and have to shuffle things around. This week they have a full week. So maybe they do consider putting Sewell at left and then putting Jamarco Jones at right tackle or something, and that frees them up to then use Skipper as the sixth lineman still, because they didn't use a whole lot of that last week. They just kind of took that out of the playbook. They didn't run anybody else as that sixth lineman. I don't know if they just don't, because they didn't have the chance to get those guys to get any reps in practice to do that or not. But they just really kind of took that out of the playbook a bit.
I thought Jones had a couple.
He may have.
Yeah, he may have had a couple. I just remember one time looking, going, "Who the heck is that?" And again, I didn't go back to find that because I was looking at some other stuff. So, but again, you're right. And again, now he's practiced it. He's probably practiced it all week. But that's a good call with him as right tackle. I forgot about that.
Or Maybe we put Jamarco Jones at left tackle and bring Dan Skipper in as the sixth offensive lineman, and we line both of them up together, and we run the ball, coach, like you've talked about. I mean, you could just go big, and that you can't get much bigger than that.
12P. 12P. Love it.
Hey,
Yeah,
go ahead, James.
I just did look. Yeah, Jones did play one snap
Okay.
last week, so they did.
Good
I think they did
idea.
bring him in. They brought him in for that one,
All right.
and
You
Jerry
wanna-
spotted it.
Nice eyes there, like a hawk. You want to talk about some even stats? Gibbs and Montgomery have each played in 9 games. They each have 122 carries, right? Gibbs, 727 to 520 for yards, 4.3 versus 6.0. Gibbs has 7 touchdowns. Montgomery has 8 touchdowns. That is pretty incredible. Very similar stats. And 122 carries is a pretty good number at this point in the season for guys getting as much work as they are. Receiving wise, they both 22 catches, 18 catches, 200 yards, 185 yards. Gibbs has 1 receiving touchdown, so they both have 8 touchdowns. Talk about equal contribution, complementary guys. And so I think that's the key, is getting the running game going early. That will open the passing game so much against this Jacksonville defense, and I'm expecting big things. All right, well, let's move over to major storylines, unexpected topics, things we haven't talked about. The first thing, let's talk about NFC Special Teams Player of the Week, Jake Bates.
All right.
That is the second time this season he has been named that, and that's only ever happened twice. There's only 2 other players in NFL and Lions history that have won this award multiple times. Jason Hansen has won it 12 times. Matt Prater 7 times. So that's some pretty astute company to be in, and I hope it just continues. I mean, what a game by Jake Bates, and what a deserving award right there.
We've been stacking them, right? We've been stacking them, whether it's an offense, defense. I think last week was the first week we didn't have somebody get an award. Is that correct? And again, those are things that we keep talking about, like, wow. Let's keep talking about those things, because it seems to
keep working.
Give us the big dub.
James, you already brought this up earlier, but Jacksonville's head coach, I mean, Doug Peterson, came in there after the huge mess that was created by the former coach from the team down south. And we would have thought that, hey, everything's better in Jacksonville. He was going to save Trevor Lawrence's career. But things have gone a lot different than they were when the Lions played Jacksonville, I believe just 2 years ago, in a very competitive game, part of that streak the Lions went on. Their seat is not cool right now. What are you hearing or seeing about Jacksonville's coaching staff?
Well, in a lot of circles, Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator for the Jaguars, is considered to be one of the worst in the NFL, if maybe not the worst in the NFL as an offensive coordinator. I think that you may see him be the scapegoat, whether you think he deserves it or not, and if the talk is that he does. But I think you may see Peterson have to fire him to save his own job.
I think that happened somewhere else in the NFL this week, maybe the NFC North even.
Yeah, maybe. So I wouldn't be shocked if you see that in Jacksonville.
All right, well, that's, we're going to find out how strong that coaching staff is and the locker room. Here's something I kind of brought up earlier, you guys. Would love your take on this. Campbell was asked where the team can improve down the stretch. And Campbell said he wanted some offensive efficiency back. He said, I'm not saying we just need to score touchdowns all the time, but he wants to see the offensive get more into a rhythm and move the ball downfield a little bit more consistently. And if you look back over the last few games, it's been some weird games. I mean, Goff did throw for 240 yards with those 5 interceptions, but against Green Bay, the weather, 145 yards. The week before, Tennessee, 85 yards. Now, I also want to point out the Lions are playing some really good teams. So it's not like, Goff's playing horrible, because before this past week, he had all those numbers that were out of this world of more touchdowns by the team than incompletions by the team. But Coach, do you see what Campbell's talking about or understand what he means by this rhythm that he speaks of?
Yeah, I think, 2 weeks ago, there's really no rhythm when you're starting out in the red zone because of a turnover, a big kickoff return, and stuff like that. So, and then, the Green Bay thing again, they're kind of dumbing down their offense a little bit. They still throwing the ball. Goff still had a pretty good game throwing it, but it's the getting a first down or getting a second first down and then maybe a punt, stuff like that. And again, it's been strange. You can't when last week you lose 5 possessions because of 5 turnovers. It's pretty tough to get into a rhythm. They're in a pretty good rhythm in the fourth quarter, and so I think he wants to see that carried on. We've seen it. Let's talk about San Francisco 49ers last year. Look at the rhythm in the first half. Bang, 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 just touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. And then the second half, we turn the ball over and then, and the catch and all that stuff. That's rest of history. But so those are the things he's talking about. It's nothing feels right. It doesn't feel the same. And I think when you look at their stats and they're falling, yet we're winning, on the opposite side of the ball, he wants to make sure those stats continue to climb. And I'm sure they have certain goal goals. We have to throw for 280 yards a game. We have to rush for 150 yards a game. And wherever their goal board is, I'm sure they'd go with it. It's probably been empty for the last couple of weeks.
That makes sense, and that's the thing I love about Campbell is his attention to detail, his never willing to rest on his laurels. I mean, he talked about it how before the season started, he was on a team a number of years back that had such a great record, and the next year they had almost all the same players, and I don't think they made the playoffs that year. James, I think it's time for the ref report. What do you got for us?
This week, the Lions get the Scott Novak crew. He's one of those guys that hasn't been the last few ones that they've had have been guys that have been crew chiefs for like 12, 15 years. He's in his 6th year. He's called the Lions games a few times in the past. They're 2-3-1 in those games. They had the tie against Arizona in the opener in 2019 when he reffed them. The biggest notable one is he had the 2021 Ravens game, in which the refs did not catch a delay a game at the end of the game, which allowed Justin Tucker to kick a 66-yard field goal to win the game, when it should have been a 71-yarder, and that 66-yarder just barely, I think it kissed off the top of the crossbar when it went through. But they call almost identical numbers of fouls on home teams and away teams this season, 54 and 55. Only had one Lions game last year, the home loss to the Chicago, but in that game, the Lions only had 25 yards and penalties to 69 for Chicago. He did also call the 2022 season finale against the Packers, that the Lions won. And of note in that game, only 2 penalties were called the whole game. Probably because the refs' hands were frozen in their pockets.
The little ball was in the whistle was frozen, so it didn't work.
Can the Lions announce when they announce the referee crew about that 2021 Lions Ravens game, that he was, they missed that, and I don't know. You get a reaction from the crowd, and then the crowd would be like extra amped up no matter what gets called in the game.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, James. That's some great information there. Let's talk about what it's going to take for the Lions to win this game. Coach, we're going to start with you.
Well, I think exactly what we just talked about, a minute ago before James talked, and that's sustaining drives. That's, doing, hitting the game plan to a T on the offense and defense side of the ball. Eliminate any major mistakes, of course, as always. We can say outrush them, out throw them, turnover battle, time of possession, stuff like that. But I think sustaining drives, and moving the chains and changing the field, tipping the field with the offense, not as much as with Fox's leg. And I think those are going to be the big things that I believe from what you're hearing him say. I think that's what his goal is going to be this week.
All right, James, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's just they got to do just barely more than showing up. is what I'd like to say. But I think they have to avoid, going into this game knowing that basically they're better than Jacksonville almost everywhere. They can't let this turn into a trap game. It's at home. They're favored by a huge margin. They're facing a backup quarterback. They can't let all these things get into their head and think, oh, all we have to do is show up. They got to go into this game and win.
Yeah, I agree with that. Coach Campbell talked about, you always have something to fix on your team. You always have something to improve on. And he also talked about how every win's going to get harder from here on out because they're getting the best shot, and your room for error just seems to get smaller because everybody wants to be the team that beats you. And so I think it's going to be all those things that you guys said. And I think the Lions have to limit their turnovers in this game. I think that's going to be a big thing because this Jacksonville team does have some ability, and I do believe, even though it's a huge spread, and from what I think, James, you're the one that told us, people are taking the over on the spread, and it's a big spread right now. I still think the Lions have to show up and get their job done, eliminate the turnovers, get the running game going, and just avoid major breakdowns or explosives on defense. And I think they will, because I think that's the game plan Aaron Glenn's going to implement. And so let's talk prediction time. Coach, any predictions in this one?
They're going to win. Just kidding. I predict that the game plan is going to be close to perfect that we've had in the last couple weeks. The game plan on both sides of the ball. Special teams, we've been doing good. Actually, we gave up some yards last week in special teams. But my gut feeling is they're going to go back to the drawing board, especially if Decker's missing, stuff like that. And then we got a new guy coming in at the end and some new guys possibly coming back. And I just think it's going to be, they're going to try to be perfect on their game plan. And I think they're going to reach that.
All right, James, how about you? Any predictions?
I think that the Lions are going to make the spread look good, but then Jacksonville will score a couple of scores late, maybe after the game is kind of out of hand to maybe get a backdoor cover.
Okay. Last week I called for an interception by a defensive back, and Carlton Davis did not let me down twice. So nice with that. I got lucky on that one. I want to call for another Hendon Hooker sighting, but I'm not going to. That was pretty good with the Titans game. So I'm just gonna call I'm gonna put poetry in motion right here, and I'm gonna say Zadarius Smith gets a sack in his first Detroit Lions game. I'm just gonna see this. See if maybe that'll happen. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, maybe the first pass play.
Yeah. Yeah, then they'd have to give him a raise right away.
Yeah, that's right. Write the check.
I'll do it.
I'd like to
not
see
me.
some-
I won't write the check, but I would agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I'd like to see some Sion Vaki play running back.
Yes, I would
First
love
time
that,
really
James.
It's the preseason.
Yeah, that would be good to see as well. Now, you guys, where we are in the season, wins are important. They are, and it's weird because the Lions' record right now is 8-1, and we would have been thrilled or happy or satisfied with 6-3 before the season started. But you look the way the things shake out. The Eagles are on a 5-game winning streak right now. The Arizona Cardinals are on a 4-game winning streak. But the room for error between the number 1 seed, I know, Coach, we're not the coaches, so we can do this stuff. And I know, Campbell won't let the players talk about it, but we have a 1-game lead on Minnesota, and we don't face them again until the end of the season. I'm feeling pretty bullish on our division right now, knowing that we beat the next 2 teams on the road. That being said, nothing's a given. But Washington's schedule is very weak the rest of this season, the Commanders. And Philly scares me more than Washington does. And if there's any time we wish the Bears had completed a Hail Mary, that might have been the game. But we only have a 2-game lead on them. So I'm just looking around the league and just realizing the room for error, as good as we are, isn't that big. And ask Kansas City, who's undefeated, and they got the 8-2 Bills right behind them. And so any thoughts on, the way the conference is looking for you guys? I know we kind of talked about this right in the last episode or two, but the margin between home field and maybe not home field really isn't that big. And I think that's what we're seeing again this year.
We talked, taking care of business, taking care of the home field right now. Win the games that, if you're a 14-point favorite in a game, you better pound them. You better put it to them. It should not be close. It shouldn't be. And again, it probably is going to be, in certain instances. So that's my big, it's scary. There's a lot of good teams, but Dan Campbell, and as a coach, all you're saying is look in the mirror. That's the only person you have to be. That's the only person you have to worry about. And again, I think the Detroit Lions are a team right now that the only team that can beat them is themselves. And I don't think that staff is going to allow it, nor the veterans.
And you're right. Campbell said it's about us, not about the other team. We got to do our jobs. We do our jobs. Things get taken care of. James, any final thoughts?
Yeah, it is interesting that the NFC North, the Bears seem to be, maybe fading a little bit. Some of the luster, I guess, is a little bit off of them, but all 4 of the teams in the NFC North are still in the top 11 in the NFL in defense. So it's not going to be easy.
No. James, Coach, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for tuning in, folks. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Like and comment on socials. Please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.